The silence from Sterling Corp was deafening. For days, the only communication I received was automated system alerts about critical failures and the persistent, maddening chime of my recurring calendar notifications. Then it came. Not an email, not a Slack message, but a phone call, a blocked number. I let it ring twice, a small, grim satisfaction warming me. On the third ring, I picked up. "John, is that you?" The voice was strained, brittle, stripped of its usual authoritative swagger. It was David Thompson, the senior VP of operations, the man who signed my performance reviews and nodded sagely during executive briefings, always looking like he understood far more than he actually did. He sounded like a man drowning, grasping for a life raft. "This is John," I replied, my voice deliberately calm, even. I was sitting in my living room, a cup of perfectly brewed Earl Grey steaming beside me. The sun streamed through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, a stark contrast to the suffocating darkness I had left behind. "John, we need to talk. This situation is escalating. The client is threatening to sue, the board is demanding answers, and HR is in a complete meltdown. We need you to come back." Thompson's voice was laced with desperation. "Just temporarily, to get things back online. We can make it worth your while." "Make it worth your while?" I echoed, a ghost of a smile playing on my lips. When I tried to address this internally, through the proper channels, I was met with silence. When I reported the harassment, nothing happened. Now when the company is on the brink of collapse, you suddenly need my IT skills? He faltered. "Look, John, I wasn't aware of the full extent of what was happening. I've seen the complaint. It's not good. But we can rectify this. We need to. For the company." "Rectify it?" I took a slow sip of my tea. "You mean for yourselves, for your reputations, for your shareholders. You want me to clean up the mess you all helped create?" "We understand your frustration," Thompson continued, the words clearly rehearsed, "and we're willing to make significant concessions, reinstatement, of course, a substantial bonus. And we're prepared to address the issues with Mark Sterling. Severance, immediate termination, whatever it takes." I leaned back in my chair, the comfortable, worn fabric a balm against the harsh corporate world I had escaped. "Mr. Thompson, my IT skills are not the only thing I possess. I also have documentation, detailed, time-stamped, irrefutable documentation of months of harassment. I have records of my own exemplary performance. And thanks to a rather interesting clause I negotiated into my original employment contract back in 2019, the one everyone overlooked during the Synergy restructuring, I have a claim to a significant portion of the intellectual property that Sterling Corp is currently operating on." A choked gasp came through the receiver. "IP? What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the core analytics platform, Mr. Thompson. The algorithms that drive your synergistic growth initiatives, the proprietary code that makes Sterling Corp what it island. I was the principal architect, and according to Section 4B of my employment agreement, upon termination without cause, that IP reverts to me. And let's be honest, being subjected to ongoing harassment and then being effectively ignored by HR when I reported it qualifies as without cause, wouldn't you agree? Especially with an EEOC complaint now on record." The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. I could almost hear the frantic whispers on the other end, the panicked consultations with legal teams. They had underestimated me. They had seen me as a replaceable cog, a background hum. They had forgotten that even the most silent gears can grind the entire machine to a halt. "John, this is unprecedented," Thompson stammered. "We can't just have you own the core of our business." "Oh, but you can," I replied, my voice still calm, measured. "Or you have two other options. Option A," I paused for dramatic effect, "is that you reinstate me immediately. With a significant promotion to Chief Technology Officer, a commensurate salary increase, and a formal apology from the board for my treatment. Additionally, Mark Sterling will be terminated with cause, and a public statement acknowledging his misconduct will be issued. We can then work on stabilizing the company. Option B," I continued, the words hanging in the air like a final verdict, "is that I exercise my IP rights. I will immediately transfer all proprietary code, all design schematics, all documentation related to the Sterling Corp analytics platform into my sole ownership. Your systems will go dark. Your client contracts will evaporate. Your market value will plummet. And then I will be filing a lawsuit for wrongful termination and constructive dismissal, with the EEOC complaint as a significant factor." I could hear the shuffling of papers, the hushed, urgent voices. Thompson was clearly not making this decision alone. The real players, the ones who truly wielded power at Sterling Corp, were now being forced to confront the consequences of their indifference. We need time to consult," Thompson said, his voice barely audible. You have 24 hours. I replied, after that, the offer of option A expires, and option B becomes the only reality. I hung up, leaving them to grapple with the digital ghost they had tried to exorcise. The next day was a blur of anxious waiting. I did not check my work email. I did not engage with any internal messaging systems. I simply lived my life, secure in the knowledge that the gears of Sterling Corp were grinding to a halt, and they knew who held the wrench. The call came late that afternoon. It was the general counsel, a notoriously sharp lawyer named Sarah Jenkins. Her voice was clipped, professional, but beneath it, I could sense a grudging respect. Mr. Lane, she began, the board has reviewed your proposal. Option A presents significant challenges, but it is the preferred course of action to avoid irreparable damage to the company. The deal was struck. The ensuing weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and internal restructuring. Mark Sterling was indeed terminated, his departure swift and silent, a stain on the company's reputation that they desperately tried to scrub away. A public apology, albeit a carefully worded one, was issued internally, acknowledging the company's failure to address issues of workplace conduct. I was reinstated, not as a mere IT analyst, but as Chief Technology Officer, with a substantial salary increase and a mandate to rebuild the company's fractured infrastructure and, more importantly, its broken culture. The true architects of the toxicity, the ones who had enabled Mark and ignored my plight, found themselves in precarious positions. Some were demoted, others were forced into early retirement, their reputations tarnished by their complicity. The company, stripped of its corrupting elements, began the long, arduous process of rebuilding. As for me, John, the quiet IT analyst, I stood on the precipice of a new chapter. The scars of the past remained, but they were now badges of honor, testaments to a battle fought not with shouting matches, but with meticulous planning and an unwavering belief in the power of the truth. I had weaponized inconvenience, turned data into justice, and proven that even the most invisible gears can bring down the most imposing machines. Watching the news reports about Sterling Corp's strategic realignment and their sudden surge in transparency initiatives was satisfying. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about correction. It was about ensuring that no one else would have to endure what I had. If watching hubris crumble under the weight of its own indifference, if witnessing corporate rot be exposed by the very systems designed to prevent it, if seeing the quiet analyst emerge victorious from the shadows sparks something in you, consider liking and subscribing. Stories like this don't just happen. They are meticulously crafted, bite by bite, until the final execution. And sometimes, the most satisfying victories are the ones fought in silence, with a well-placed calendar invite and a meticulously documented truth. The hum of Sterling Corp was different now. It was a hum of recovery, of rebuilding, a testament to the fact that even the most toxic environments can be cleansed, if you're willing to expose the rot and hold those responsible accountable. My reign as CTO was just beginning, and the systems I built would ensure that transparency and integrity were not just buzzwords, but the bedrock of everything Sterling Corp stood for. Justice, after all, is best served cold, meticulously documented, and with impeccable IT support.
The office was a monument to mediocrity, a vast, beige expanse of cubicles that seemed to exhale a collective sigh of existential dread. Fluorescent lights hummed a relentless, soul-sapping tune, reflecting off the polished linoleum floors like the cold, dead eyes of 1,000 unfulfilled dreams. This was my kingdom, my battleground, my gilded cage for 22 years. I was Sarah Jenkins, the phantom limb of Synergy Solutions, the one nobody thought about until something went horribly, irredeemably wrong. My domain was in the gleaming executive suites with their floor-to-ceiling windows and artisanal water dispensers. No, my kingdom was the war room of forgotten things, the tangled mess of cables behind the server racks, the perpetually jammed copier that sounded like a dying walrus, the arcane labyrinth of shared drives where crucial documents went to die a slow, bureaucratic death. I was the keeper of the sacred spreadsheets, the weaver of the labyrinthine schedules, the silent guardian of the coffee machine's delicate ecosystem. You see, I didn't just make coffee. I understood its soul, its brewing temperature, its being origin, its precise water-to-grounds ratio. It was all etched into my very being. A skill set apparently as valuable as a used napkin in the eyes of certain modern titans of industry. And the current titan, the self-proclaimed disruptor, was a man named Victor Sterling. Sterling. The name itself was a boast, a polished, expensive shoe designed to stomp on the little people. He'd arrived with the fanfare of a rock star and the humility of a peacock. His suits were tailored to within an inch of their life, his hair impeccably coiffed, and his pronouncements, delivered in a booming baritone that could curdle milk, were a symphony of buzzwords. Synergy, disruption, paradigm shift, leveraging core competencies. He was a walking, talking corporate cliché, a caricature so perfect I often wondered if he was a sentient AI designed by a committee of MBA graduates. My role, as he saw it, was to be the unobtrusive hum in the background, the quiet whir of the air conditioning that you only notice when it stops. He addressed me, when he addressed me at all, with a patronizing nod, as if acknowledging a particularly efficient piece of office furniture. "Sarah, can you just get me those numbers?" He'd boom, pointing vaguely at a spreadsheet on my screen, as if it were a cryptic alien artifact. He never asked how I got them, or the fact that I'd spent 3 hours that morning wrestling with a corrupted database to retrieve them. My competence was a given, like the sun rising or the inevitable dread of Monday mornings. And that, as it turned out, was his fatal, magnificent error. The trouble, like a rogue paper jam, started subtly. It began with whispers in the break room, hushed conversations that stopped dead when I walked in. Then came the emails from my colleagues, forwarded with increasing desperation. "Did you see the latest memo on restructuring, Sarah? Are they planning layoffs?" The air in the office grew thick with unspoken anxiety, a palpable tension that clung to the beige walls like cheap perfume. I, of course, remained outwardly serene. My hands, usually busy untangling network cables or inputting data, were now meticulously organizing my personal files. Because I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that Sterling's strategic realignment was about to become a very personal realignment for me. It culminated on a Tuesday that felt, from the moment I unlocked the office doors at 6:32 a.m., like it was wearing lead boots. The usual suspects were already milling about. The early bird coders fueled by caffeine and existential dread, the marketing team already strategizing their next viral campaign. But there was a new energy, a brittle excitement like a poorly constructed bridge about to give way. Victor Sterling, naturally, was at the epicenter. He was holding court in the executive lounge, a place I visited only for the rare luxury of an actual espresso machine, which he had, of course, monopolized and branded with his own ridiculous logo. I was busy wrestling with the quarterly investor report, a beast of a document that required the patience of a saint and the digital dexterity of a seasoned hacker. Sterling's voice, amplified by the lounge's acoustics, cut through the ambient hum of productivity, like a chainsaw through a butter sculpture. And that's why, effective immediately, we're streamlining operations. This means consolidating departments, empowering our agile teams, and frankly, letting go of legacy assets. Legacy assets. The term hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I felt a cold dread crawl up my spine, a premonition as chilling as a server room power outage in August. I'd been with Synergy Solutions for 22 years. I'd seen 3 CEOs come and go, navigated countless system upgrades, celebrated product launches, and endured more than my fair share of synergy sessions that amounted to free donuts and corporate platitudes. I knew the company's infrastructure like the back of my hand, not just the hardware and software, but the unwritten rules, the subtle power dynamics, the forgotten clauses buried in contracts signed when synergy was just a hopeful flicker in a garage. I continued to tap away at my keyboard, my fingers moving with practiced efficiency, but my mind was racing. Sterling's pronouncements were always a performance, designed to intimidate and impress. He revelled in the drama of it all. He loved making an example. And I, with my quiet competence and my encyclopedic knowledge of the company's digital skeleton, was clearly marked as a prime candidate for his grand spectacle. Just as I was about to hit save on the investor report, an email notification pinged. Subject: Urgent meeting, Victor Sterling, strategic realignments. The sender was Sterling's perpetually flustered executive assistant, Brenda. I knew Brenda. She was a good soul, trapped in the hamster wheel of Sterling's demands. The meeting was scheduled for precisely 20 minutes from now, in conference room 3B, a small windowless box designed for awkward conversations and swift dismissals. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs, but my hands remained steady. I didn't need to be a psychic to know what this was about. I saved the investor report, then opened a new document. Title: Personal Leverage. I started typing, not with emotion, but with the cold, precise logic of a seasoned accountant balancing books. Item 1. Original lease agreement, 2003. My name is on it, solely. The company was too small, too credit challenged to secure a commercial lease. I co-signed. Then, as we grew, the founders, in their infinite wisdom, never updated it. Said it was easier to manage. Easier for them, maybe. I just kept paying on time. They thought I was just the administrator. They forgot I was also the legal tenant. Item 2. HVAC maintenance contract. Renewed 2021. This was a big one. A few years ago, Sterling had orchestrated a complete overhaul of the building's climate control system. He'd patted himself on the back for the efficiency gains. What he didn't know was that the vendor required a personal guarantee for a system of that scale, and guess whose name was on the dotted line because the finance department was in disarray during the transition? Mine. Item 3. Software licenses. Proprietary scheduling. Software. Proprietary license. This was my masterpiece. Years ago, the company had decided to optimize its internal scheduling and task management. The chosen software was expensive, clunky, and riddled with bugs. I'd spent months, actual months of my own time, after hours, fueled by lukewarm coffee and sheer bloody-mindedness, developing a custom integration module. It made the whole system sing. It was so crucial, so seamless, that no one ever questioned its origin. It was simply part of the system. But the underlying license for that module, that was under my personal developer account, not Synergy's, mine. I took a deep breath, the stale office air doing little to calm my racing pulse. Sterling wanted to call me a legacy asset, something to be discarded. Fine. But he didn't realize that some legacy assets were more like bedrock. They held the whole damn building up. Brenda appeared at my cubicle, looking more harried than usual, her glasses perched precariously on her nose. Sarah, Mr. Sterling needs you. Now. I nodded, giving my keyboard a final deliberate pat. "Coming, Brenda. Just finishing up a critical update." As I stood, I subtly slid a small worn notebook from my desk drawer into my pocket. It wasn't official company property. It was my private ledger, a meticulous record of every favor called in, every undocumented task performed, every instance where my quiet labor had kept this sprawling corporate mess from collapsing. It was my personal archive, a testament to my invisible contributions. Walking towards conference room 3B, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It wasn't the calm of resignation, but the quiet, electric hum of preparedness. Sterling might think he was about to wield the axe, but he hadn't bothered to check if I was the one holding the entire tree. He was about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't a loud bark, but a silent, perfectly timed keystroke. The real game, the one he was too arrogant to even comprehend, was just about to begin, and I, the legacy asset, was holding all the cards. The silence that followed my departure from Synergy Solutions wasn't empty. It was pregnant with anticipation. Sterling had made his move a swift, brutal cut intended to eliminate a perceived nuisance. He'd underestimated the power of meticulous preparation, the quiet strength of a carefully curated paper trail, and the devastating impact of someone who knows exactly where to press. The first wave of his miscalculation hit Synergy like a slow-motion tidal wave. My subtle digital nudges, the accidental misrouting of critical client communications, the minor but persistent system glitches. They were designed to destabilize, to create friction, to force an acknowledgement of my absence. Brenda's increasingly frantic internal memos, detailing unforeseen system failures and critical operational disruptions, were my primary intel. Sterling, I imagined, was probably blaming the IT department, a collection of bright-eyed but ultimately overwhelmed youngsters who lacked the institutional memory that I embodied. The real game, however, began with the acquisition. Sterling, in his haste to secure a PR coup before his industry conference, had rushed the due diligence. He bypassed crucial steps, convinced his own hype machine that he was a visionary, not a risk-taker. That was his fatal flaw, because I knew the acquisition involved the transfer of sensitive data and proprietary AI technology. And I knew with absolute certainty that Synergy's internal systems were a labyrinth of undocumented shortcuts and bypassed security protocols, a fact I myself had exploited and patched countless times. My next move was as simple as it was devastating. I drafted a formal inquiry to the Office of Regulatory Compliance for the technology sector. It was a masterpiece of plausible deniability. I positioned myself not as a vengeful ex-employee, but as a conscientious former administrator concerned about potential compliance breaches following my recent dismissal. I attached a curated selection of my meticulously organized evidence, redacted copies of the original lease agreement, subtly highlighting Synergy's precarious tenancy. Internal memos that pointed to Sterling's pressure to bypass security protocols during the acquisition. And, most crucially, the original software license agreements for the proprietary administrative system I had developed and maintained under my personal name, not Synergy's. The acquisition, a highly sensitive process, was now under the unforgiving gaze of regulators. The response was swift. A formal investigation, audits, data reviews, on-site inspections, the very processes Sterling had likely skimmed over in his haste. Synergy's systems, already teetering without my constant oversight, buckled under the pressure. The acquisition stalled. Whispers of regulatory scrutiny turned into panicked executive meetings. Brenda's internal memos became even more frantic, speaking of unforeseen challenges and temporary disruptions. Sterling's carefully crafted narrative began to unravel. Then came the call. It was Sterling himself, his voice stripped of its usual booming arrogance, replaced by a reedy desperation. "Sarah," he'd stammered, "we need you. The acquisition is in jeopardy. The regulators are asking questions, and our IT department, they're lost. We need someone who understands the infrastructure." I let him plead for a moment, savouring the reversal of fortunes. Then I spoke, my voice calm and measured, a stark contrast to his panicked sputtering. "Mr. Sterling," I began, "you called me a legacy asset. You wanted me filed away and forgotten. It appears I was simply misfiled. And now the archives are speaking." I laid out my terms, not as demands, but as a clear, logical presentation of options. Option A, reinstatement. Full back pay, a significant raise, a public acknowledgement of my contributions, and a formal written apology from Sterling himself. Option B, a substantial severance package. This package would account for my 22 years of service, the value of the proprietary systems I had developed and maintained, the very systems Synergy now couldn't operate without, and the potential regulatory fines Synergy was now facing due to their compliance failures during the acquisition process. Crucially, Option B also included Sterling's immediate and unconditional resignation from Synergy Solutions. He blustered, he threatened, he even attempted a pathetic appeal to loyalty. But the audit was already underway. The acquisition was crumbling, and the board, sensing a catastrophic failure, was already preparing to cut him loose. Sterling was cornered, his arrogance no match for my meticulously prepared evidence. He chose Option B. The severance package was substantial, enough to grant me financial freedom and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had been fairly compensated for decades of unrecognized labor. The fallout was swift and dramatic. Sterling, facing immense pressure from the board and the looming threat of regulatory action, was forced to resign. His departure was a PR nightmare, a public unravelling that Synergy attempted to spin as a strategic realignment. The acquisition was scuttled, a costly failure that sent shockwaves through the company. The startup, now free from the cloud of Synergy's impending regulatory woes, found a more reputable buyer, a much-needed silver lining in the corporate wreckage. As for me, I walked away not with bitterness, but with a profound sense of earned peace. I had reclaimed my worth not through grand gestures, but through quiet competence and strategic patience. My new reality was one of freedom, the ability to pursue projects that truly inspired me, unburdened by the petty tyrannies of corporate ego. Looking back at the gleaming glass facade of the Synergy Solutions building, it was no longer a symbol of my past servitude, but a monument to a battle won, a testament to the power of the overlooked. If watching corporate hubris face the consequences of its arrogance resonates with you, consider liking this video and subscribing for more tales of quiet competence dismantling corporate arrogance. Your engagement helps us keep the coffee pot brewing with tales of unlikely victories. Because sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't a loud bark, but a perfectly timed keystroke.